We saw this with um, Libya's president Gaddafi when he was painted as the bad guy through the BBCs, the CNN, all the world global broadcasting news agencies, and with the aid and help of some African presidents that were puppets, and they spread this narrative about Gaddafi being this warmonger, this dictator, and what they did, they literally took him out with the world watching.
For the last 2 days, on Monday and today this morning, I spoke with the President of South Africa, who sought me out to speak with me on this matter because of their involvement in Eastern Congo. And he's also there pretending to be playing a peacemaker role. And he has a force that has been fighting alongside FDLR and has been fighting the M23 on the instructions of Tshisekedi, because these are people who are not supposed to be in Congo, that these are from Rwanda, or the M23 are not Rwandans, please. These are Congolese, and one time he accepts it, then another time he says no, part of it is yes, and then the other part is from Rwanda, and these are He keeps on going. And how do we, leaders of our own countries, accept this to go on forever and just accept that we shall be manipulated by Tshisekedi or whoever is supporting him?
So that is Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, and he's responding to what President Ramaphosa said about the war escalation and actually going to war with Rwanda over the DRC and over the M23 that they're claiming is Rwandans, when Paul Kagame is stating that they're not Rwandans, they're Congolese fighting in the M23, and they are the ones who causing this issue in the DRC Congo. But I have a few things to say about this and this situation. We have seen this played before, and I don't understand why some of our leaders and some people who are saying that Rwanda is responsible for the destabilization of the Congo. We saw this with Libya's president Gaddafi when he was painted as the bad guy through the BBCs, the CNN, all the world global broadcasting news agencies, and with the aid and help of some African presidents that were puppets, and they spread this narrative about Gaddafi being this warmonger, this dictator, and what they did, they literally took him out with the world watching and agreeing with something. And it's years after we found out it was the Western powers to be who spread this narrative that he was this person that needs to be taken out because he's so dangerous to the world. Knowing what we know now, that it was all over his goal and his democracy, they didn't want to be replicated on the African continent or the African currents, which was the golden era. So they took him out and they spread for years false narrative on Gaddafi, make everyone hated him, and they're doing the same thing with Paul Kagame of Rwanda. Why? Because, listen to this, 30 years ago, Rwanda went through a devastating internal civil war where over a million Rwandans lost their lives because of this conflict was also perpetrated again by outside influences, and they went through this big civil war, which we all saw. There's movies about it and stuff. Then they take time to rebuild. Paul Kagame took time to rebuild Rwanda to where it is now. So if Rwanda was facing civil unrest 30 years ago, and by say, let's say 15 years after they actually reconcile and start to build a nation, the Congo have been in civil war from ever since we can remember what I know of the DRC Congo, since the 1890s, 94, when they had the Berlin Accord, when they split up the African continent. Anyway, So if 30 years ago Rwanda had a civil war, how is it Rwanda's fault for the DRC Congo's issue going on up to today? These are we have to blame the DRC leaders who become puppets of the West and sell the country. Oh, look at this. There have been illegal airstrips built in the DRC Congo where we have Western transport planes are landing and taking out gold. And this is recorded. You have the UN drones who had crashed in the Congo. And what did they fall inside? Gold and parachutes. So, who is actually sowing discord or false narrative in the DRC? Because the more internal issues the DRC has, the more minerals and resources the Western world can reap and fly to that country under the disguise of the UN and all peacekeepers. All they're in there doing is securing the mineral sites, having planes, cargo planes, land in the DRC on illegal private strips, land and take off freely. How is it no one is talking about this? We have seen where they have taken out African leaders who, President Lumumba, within 2 years in the Congo, they took him out of power immediately by taking his life, and they replace him with people who they can rule and control. So, how is it you're gonna blame Rwanda for what's been going on for decades? How is that possible? And here goes what they know. Now they're using another African president to help sell this narrative that Rwanda is responsible for the DRC, all DRC troubles, which is a false narrative by a mile, because again, Rwanda had their own internal issue 30 years ago. So who was destabilizing and making sure there is no real leader in the Congo all these decades before that? So how can I blame an African country for this when you want two African countries not to go to war? If South Africa should go to war right now with Rwanda, it's going to cost money. It's going to cost millions of dollars to send war. And not all of that, they're going to have a lot of lives lost in war. So it's a lose-lose situation. Loss of lives, economy going to crumble, and the economy of South Africa already crumbling because of bad management by Cyril Ramaphosa. He have no right to be threatening the Rwanda. He should be trying to have talks and sit downs. You see, listen, no, this is what Mali president said when he went to the UN to bring evidence of the French influencing and trying to destabilize and espionage on the continent. Take a listen. Boom.
Le gouvernement renouvelle sa demande d'avoir une réunion spécifique du Conseil de sécurité qui lui donnera l'occasion de présenter des preuves concrètes des actes de duplicité, d'espionnage et de déstabilisation de la France à l'encontre du Mali, y compris le partage de renseignements et le largage de matériel au profit d'organisations criminelles.
So there you have it. So we know that they have Western countries that are actively funding these groups, mercenaries, to destabilize African countries, to make sure there's no peace so that they cannot realize they are stealing their resources. Look at what President Ayom Chori did in 2 years by putting in infrastructure. How is it these countries that are so rich in mineral and resources cannot have, and their population is so poor, and not only poor, why is it their countries are so underdeveloped? This is not by coincidence, it's by design to make sure the African countries don't come to their full potential, or else these Western countries whose economy depends on the African continent to not fall. Hence the reason why they are so still fighting the Sahel nation right now, the Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. And there's over 19 assassination attempts on Ayom Chori's life within 2 years. And there's proof and evidence of Western countries' involvement, the French, the Americans, There's proof of this. There's been proof and it's been shown. So how is it now people can act as if this DRC Rwanda situation is not the same exact playbook they've been using for years to paint a narrative, use a one puppet president in Africa or two to talk bad about the one president to show him as a dictator, a warlord, a warmonger. They did the same thing with President Gaddafi. So we're gonna sit back and just watch this replay as if we don't know how these people operate, and then we're gonna send our own African brothers to go and fight each other. There is so much going on in the background that people know about. If they stop and think for a minute, they know that most of what we're seeing and hearing is puppet presidents being put in a position to make sure they lie about other African presidents who cannot be ruled or manipulated or used. We have seen this happen. What's going on here where people cannot, I don't understand some of these African people themselves are rooting against Paul Kagame, knowing what these outsiders have done to other African leaders by taking them out. The only reason we still have Abraham Traore is because he's a very smart individual, and he's a tactician now. He's a tactician. He's very tactical, and he's not trustworthy as the others. He's vigilant, and other presidents like of Mali, Niger, Tashini, and Messi. So we have the playbook, we read it, we notice like how is these three countries in under 3 years can become debt free. Well, one of them is debt free. Others almost debt free, and they are fully self-sufficient financially. They don't use the World Bank or the IMF to fund anything in their country. They don't accept aid or nothing like that. So if these countries can do it in this time, they have to make sure they will draw the attention away from the Sahel nation and give them a next issue to focus on while they don't want to focus on the Sahel country. So they're using the DRC. Rwanda is struggling now to manipulate people to go against Rwanda so they can still have their multinational groups in these countries to control the resources of the DRC. The DRC is and will always be the richest country in the world. DRC, because they have every single mineral and resource that every country needs, and yet they are some of the poorest and undeveloped. It is the poorest and most undeveloped African country in the continent. When it is the richest. Do we think this is coincidence? This is by design to make sure that this country does not succeed at all costs. So they'll do everything in their power to make sure they mislead the public and point the finger to another African president like they did with Gaddafi and take him out because of what? When they want good for the African continent, they don't want you around because you're throwing a monkey wrench in their plan. You're throwing you're putting a spoke in it. Like, you know, a wheel and I put a stick in it and it stops. That's what they're trying to do. They want to make sure that the African continent does not unite. A united Africa is an undisputed Africa. That's why we don't need the SADC, the African Union, the ECOWAS. These groups are taken over and managed and run by the colonizers. Anyway, so there's a lot of other videos out there that can go in depth and tell you about what's going on with Rwanda and DRC and South Africa. And we know we cannot trust Cyril Ramaphosa for nothing because he's a puppet. We know this. So why are people listening to him and sending his own soldiers to have their lives taken away unjustly, needlessly? Because they already lose like 9 of them have a loss of life. And they are blaming who? Rwanda. Are they sure of this? But again, this is where the misrepresentation comes in. This is why I'm sure we ban the BBC and the CNN. We ban all of Western media out of the country because of what they're spreading misinformation. So anyway, I will keep an eye on this story to let you know what's coming up. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section. I don't know, as always. Love, like, share, comment, and subscribe as well. Tell a friend, tell a friend. Boom.